Hello and welcome to the first episode of TLDR. I'm your host Aditya.
And I'm Lauren.
And today we're going to be talking about some issues relevant to young people in the Illawarra region. Today's topics are...
Wait, that's really boring. Maybe we could summarise it and make it a bit quicker.
This is Too Long Didn't Read.
You know that we spend 29,000 hours at work in our lifetime.
No, I didn't.
Yeah. The bearer of fun facts, Dolly Parton actually said that it's enough to drive you crazy.
Good song.
That cup of ambition's pretty good.
Yeah, but do we actually get any workers' rights?
That's the thing, we do. I actually went out and I spoke to people around the Illawarra and they told me a little bit about their experience when it comes to workers' rights. It was really intriguing. Here it is.
In Snow White, the 7 dwarves march merrily hi-hoing to work. They dig for diamonds, working in unison, but have you ever noticed the state of the mine? Dopey creates hazards, Grumpy is always pissed off at work, and where are their helmets? Thankfully, they're just cartoons. It's common for young employees to run into experiences where they feel exploited in their workplace.
Yeah, I think I've been underpaid before, but I wasn't really sure where to go or who to talk to about it, so I just left it in the end, really.
I think they don't hire Asian people because they think we don't speak good English, and maybe they prefer someone who will be living longer in Australia.
Are you aware of your workers' rights?
Not really, no.
Do you know where to go to find out more information about them?
No.
Employees are entitled to minimum wage, breaks during shifts, insurance, and a comfortable workplace environment. You're required by law to be paid based on the hours you work, and you must be given pay slips 1 day following payday. Full-time employees are entitled to 38 hours a week of work. Employers aren't allowed to send you home just because it's quiet. You must be given 1 to 5 weeks notice if you're terminated. If you're fired for misconduct, this does not apply.
Why would you want to have sad, upset workers? It just doesn't make any sense.
Manny Rossetti owns a hospitality business in Wollongong, and he believes it's vital for his employees to be happy at work.
You are working in an environment with 20 to 30 other staff, all different sexes, all different sexual orientations, religious orientations. I don't expect everyone to like everyone specifically, but what I do expect, if you don't like someone, they're never going to know about it because you're going to treat them exactly the same way as everyone else. That fosters a harmonious environment.
Although it might seem easier sometimes to open up a Word doc and get that resume started, there are people that will listen to you about your complaints. Fairtrade New South Wales takes on 50,000 complaints every single year.
If you feel your employer is taking you for granted, you can approach your boss, talk to family and friends. You can lodge an application to Fair Work Commission or Fair Work Ombudsman, or you can apply for legal action or compensation. For cases regarding discrimination, confide in the Australian Human Rights Commission.
So yeah, that was actually really interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to know that we actually have rights at work. I mean, I've never had issues myself, but it's good to know.
Yeah, I'm the same. I mean, work's been pretty great for me.
Other than that, what's next up on the agenda?
Drugs.
Drugs.
Drugs are next. Yeah, we're going to be looking at music festivals and drugs.
Ah, okay, right, yeah. I'm pretty sure Defcon had a bit of a drug problem recently.
It did. 45 people actually danced away with charges.
Oh, wow.
Incredible, right?
Our reporter Madie's just talked to a couple of people from different generations about their drug use, so we'll cut it to her.
The Rolling Stones, Michael Jackson and Beyonce, 3 iconic artists who have mesmerised billions of fans for over half a century. Also enticing these audiences are the drugs that have long been associated with the music industry. These shifts in genres often run alongside trends in narcotic consumption. 15-year-old Groove in the Move punter lucky to be alive after drug overdose is a headline we regularly see. And with the increasing risk of ingesting a bad batch, there is a need for harm minimisation. As of May 2017, the ACT government proposed thousands of drug testing kits to be trialled at the upcoming festival Spilt Milk. The kits will allow festival goers to check the ingredients of their pill of choice for free. If found to be tampered with or containing foreign substances, the government hopes the kit will act as a deterrent and reduce the potential number of overdoses and deaths. We spoke to 3 talents who stand 20 years apart from each other to find out if there is a gap between the generations and what exactly happened when drugs was mixed with music.
If you went into a concert, the first thing you would notice is the smell of marijuana all of the time. And it was very strong. And a lot of them open air concerts, like the Rolling Stones, and I went there a number of times, and the smell of marijuana was...
A lot of people have this persona that pot is really bad and it makes you do bad things, but I don't think it does.
I started smoking weed when I was 14. And I was considered a late bloomer. Developed into heavier stuff around 17, 18, which is, you'll find quite common for a lot of those boys in the Shire at the very least.
70s, late 60s, 70s, fantastic era. Saw a lot of blues singers, they were sensational.
Going to those concerts, to those festivals, Soundwave, I think it was called, I went a few times with my nephew, who's like 18, well he was back then, and you get in the mosh pit and do the wall of death and everything else, and it was like, that was so cool. It was just like when I was back then. Mm-hmm. But the difference is that, you know, people were off their guts. Like, and I'm thinking, I look at that and I think, oh, was I like that when we went? Oh, yeah, I was.
When you went to a concert, you weren't guaranteed a seat, so it was mainly outdoor. You found a seat, you were lucky. Everybody just loved it. Like, whatever came on, whatever we went to.
The opinion I've seen from the government is that people just simply should not do it if they don't want to die horribly in a festival portaloo. Of course, is a very unfair way of looking at things, because the idea that people should not do it will not actually stop them from doing it.
Moving into a world now where there's like, you know, it's changing so much.
What I've heard today, I mean, yeah, I think the kid's fine. I think the kid will be tremendous.
Yeah, I think that kids these days are a little bit naive when it comes to that sort of stuff. You know, they probably think, oh, you know, you got no idea what I'm talking about, but I do. I've been there and I've done it.
Music's been an extremely big part of my life. Extremely big, even though I can't play it. Music is an expression. It's a part of who you are, and every culture's got it. Every culture dances in some way.
Thanks, Madie. That was pretty crazy to see the different viewpoints we had from people throughout the ages.
I wish my grandma was that cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be that cool.
Speaking of which, not really, but did you ever play Mario Kart?
Yeah, of course.
How great was it?
It was the best.
I know.
I still play Mario Kart.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you good at it?
Yeah. I'm amazing
Right.
at it.
I'm probably better.
Debatable.
Speaking of which, we actually had one of our reporters, Matt, do a really cool story about esports.
Yeah, it's coming up in the world. Check it out.
An esport, or electronic sport, is a form of competition facilitated by a video game. Like films, video games have genres, but are defined just as much by how you play them as tone and plot. There are certain genres that are better suited to esports, primarily games that can pit players against players, as opposed to against the computer. One such genre is well known, the first-person shooter. In these types of games, perspective is narrowed down to that of a foot soldier, where a small team of players work against the other, either for eliminations or for a larger objective. Generally, esports-centric games are specifically designed by their developers to suit a wide range of competitive skill, to appeal to both regular consumers and their prospective esports scene. Athleticism might not be a term naturally attributed to video games, but top-tier esports players often spend hours a day drilling just to retain the muscle memory necessary for a title's demand on reflexes and dexterity. Similar to soccer, with first-person shooters, well-implemented drills have a huge impact on aim accuracy, team play, and field positioning. Once a game gains post-release traction as an esport, these skilled players start emerging, whether it be through the game's internal ranking system, community-driven leaderboards, or popularity in streaming services. Once a certain audience demand is met, tournaments ranging from local to international are held through LAN events, where each player's gaming device is hooked up to a local network and played live in front of an audience. Venues can range from internet cafes, to local university campuses, to entire stadiums. For the bigger events, players are elevated on a podium or stage. PCs or consoles are typically supplied by the showrunners, with players taking their seats in front of their designated gaming rig. Every player's video feed is then relayed to a spectator system, typically one built into the game by developers. The players will compete as an in-game character of some type. The audience then watches the player's character on screen, as each minute action, like aiming and triggering special abilities, is communicated with an in-game animation and effect. In esports, the video feed is where all the action is. Smaller tournaments mostly act as a spotlight for local talent, with modest prize pools and audiences, while the bigger bouts are typically reserved for established players and teams, sometimes with $1 million plus cash pools, and as of early 2017, player salaries. With the huge rise of dedicated streaming services, primarily Twitch, audiences can also watch any level of tournament for free, in the comfort of their own home, exploding viewership and industry economy over the last 5 years. Between tournaments, viewers can also tune in to their favourite players' practice regimen and casual games, being able to apply professional standards of play to their own gameplay. In the past, esports has struggled with its definition as a sport, although the similarities, while often contentious, are plain. But the interconnectivity and relatability between player and spectator is perhaps the most unique and enticing aspect of esports, and it's what truly makes it its own beast.
This is rigged.
Well, nah, I just shit at Mario Kart.
No, I'm not. I protest. This is so rigged.
Well, speaking of protests, let's hand it over to Kirstie for a story about the Adani mine protest.
The Australian Youth Climate Coalition kicked off a number of massive protests on beaches across Australia this month against the proposed Adani Carmichael mine in central Queensland. Does it sound familiar? Or have you never heard of it? Well, here's your refresher. Indian-owned mining company Adani Group has been promised over $1 billion of public money by the Turnbull government to fund an extensive mining operation in Queensland's Galilee Basin. It'll be Australia's biggest coal mine, and the company hopes to extract around 2.3 billion tonnes of coal in 60 years. The previous Liberal government under Tony Abbott promised that the mine would create an estimated 10,000 jobs for Queenslanders, but that number was later significantly decreased to 1,464 jobs by Adani's own expert Jerome Farrar. Fabricated job numbers aside, why would this be a bad idea? The proposed mine would impact 28,000 hectares of land. That's the size of 5 Sydney harbours. Of that area, over 20,000 hectares, or 28,000 soccer fields, would need to be cleared, most of which is mature woodland, home to threatened species such as koalas and echidnas. The mine would churn over 9.5 billion litres of underground water, and is predicted to make the Maluka Springs dry up completely. The operation would interfere with the ancestral grave sites of the Indigenous Juru people and would dredge up the previously undisturbed seabed of the Great Barrier Reef, causing water contamination of the seagrass meadows inhabited by dugongs. It is estimated around 500 coal ships would travel through the Great Barrier Reef, risking oil spills, groundings, and boat strike injury and death to humpback whales in the area. To top it all off, the burning of the coal extracted would result in 4.6 billion tonnes of carbon dioxide emissions. That's around 120 million tonnes a year, which is more than all of the black coal power stations in Australia combined. So why are young people protesting again?
Because climate change is jeopardising not only the futures of us, but the futures of our children. And to sit around and be silent while there's all this stuff going on, be a bit of an injustice to our futures and our children's future.
I feel like there's a lot of issues that young people are going to be affected by now and in the future, and we're kind of sick of just standing around and letting it happen to us, and everyone's kind of found their voice and is willing to start fighting for our futures.
Yeah, it's worth getting involved. It's just nice, like, even being here today, to be around hundreds of people that are like-minded. Sometimes you can feel very alone in things like this. You can feel like you're just one small person on this massive scale and your voice is never really going to be heard. But when you get involved and you meet people like you and you get together in these huge numbers, kind of feels as though you are making a difference, which is pretty nice.
Well, I think what's really exciting about politics at the moment is there's so many ways to get engaged. Today we saw the AYCC coming together and doing really exciting grassroots organising. But also, talk to your family, talk to your friends, start a politics club or a discussion group up at your university or your local TAFE. There are so many ways to get engaged. The secret, I think, is to have a passion, have a commitment, and then promise to do something more than just press your keyboard. Get out, get organised, talk to others.
People power has a lot of power as well. Like, obviously we don't have political power, but when there's enough of us together, we can really influence how things happen in the country.
Thanks so much for that package, Kirstie. It was really insightful.
Yeah, insightful, but a bit worrying. That mine doesn't sound like a good idea.
Yeah, no.
Anyway, earlier in the week we had a bit of a heated debate panel.
Yeah, we interviewed 2 of the WUSA candidates for the upcoming student elections. But don't worry, we edited out all of the punching, all of the swearing.
Kicking, screaming,
Yeah.
swearing.
All gone.
Yeah.
Here's the clean cut version with Grace.
We're here in the studio today for a live panel discussion with Zachary Fitzpatrick and Chloe Rafferty. Hi. We have an upcoming student election for the WUSA Council. How are you guys feeling?
Excellent.
Pretty good. Pretty good, yeah? No nerves?
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah? So first off, I'd like to open the floor to both candidates and get them to give a quick 1-minute summary on what their policies are and how they'd like to campaign for this. So Zach, if we'd like to start with you, please.
Thank you. What we believe, and the Revolution team believe for WUSA, is that we need to focus on the services of our university to ensure that the service delivery that we have is the best it can possibly be to ensure that students get the absolute best value out of our degree, which is why we're going to be campaigning for a range of increased services around the university and to do that in conjunction with the university to ensure that we get the best possible outcomes for students at UAW.
Perfect. And Chloe?
Well, I guess we think at Save Our Union that now is probably the most important time as ever to have a fighting activist student union that stands up for student rights and young people, particularly with a Turnbull Liberal government that is trying to massively increase the cost of going to university, cut billions of dollars out of funding for higher education, and we've seen across the Illawarra some pretty appalling instances of bosses massively ripping off young people and students at this university. So we want to see a fighting activist student union with a social conscience.
Now, Zachary, you've been involved with WUSA prior.
Yes.
And as you're aware, in 2016, WUSA disaffiliated from the National Union of Students. I'd just like to get your opinion on where students should stand when it comes to unions. Do you think that this is a progressive move for the student body to move away from the National Union of Students? What do you think about that?
For me, and I believe the majority of the team who were with me on that 2016 WUSA Council, we didn't necessarily come in with the intention of disaffiliating. And it was only upon receiving a $1 million bill from the NUS that we began to question what the values of the organisation actually were. And that's what was so thoroughly disappointing. And upon going back to them and asking what was realistically the justification for this, they had no real response. They had no real tenuous reason for us to be a part of the NUS, aside from the conference in which we see numerous people eating pieces of paper just so a motion can't come to the floor, so we can see a 3-day party for political hacks. And we didn't want to be a part of that.
Do you think that there was a time when this National Union of Students actually worked for university students, or do you think it's always been flawed?
Again, I don't have that collective knowledge going all the way back, and I'm not going to pretend to say when the NUS was a powerhouse or when it was not, but I think it's very important to notice what are the significant legislative accomplishments, what are the significant indeed accomplishments of the NUS over the last several years, indeed my time at university.
Stopping fee deregulation is probably the primary significance of the National Union of Students, and I think that most students would imagine that stopping the Abbott government and Chris Pine as Education Minister from pushing through the deregulation of university fees, which the National Union of Students campaign did 3 times in 2014. That's probably its most significant accomplishment in recent years and probably one of the most important ones for students across Australia.
University fees have been in place for on both sides of politics for a very long time now. You know, the last time we saw that there was no fees for university students was back in Whitlam days. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about 40 years now. Is it not plausible to say that yes, we do need to pay for university, and to do that, you know, we can use these fees to lower textbook prices, to do X, Y, and Z, because, you know, as we have seen, like for 40 years we've had these fees. Is it not better to challenge the government to use these fees better rather than challenging them to get rid of them altogether?
Well, I think for now the biggest fight is stopping the 7.5% fee increase that Turnbull's proposing to put through in the next sitting of Parliament. But I'm for a free and fully funded education system.
But would it not be a better use of our energy and a better use of our time protesting the sizes of tutorial classes, taking on those little challenges rather than taking on a challenge that Turnbull isn't looking at protests on UOW campuses? Is it not better to challenge, say, the Chancellor or the Deans of faculties?
Oh, I think they need challenging too, absolutely, yeah.
Would you prefer to focus on them if you were in WUSA, or would you still look at the bigger picture?
We have to take on both of those challenges, and an activist student union is going to take on both the little issues here on campus and tie that to the bigger picture question of actually who should fund our education. And I think that we should have a free and fully funded education system.
Okay, well in future we look forward to seeing some protests from the Socialist Alternative on prices of textbooks.
Can I respond to that?
Yes, I would like you to respond to that.
You know, the staff fund has been notoriously wasted by former WUSA councils, and I think it...
Like your own.
We haven't applied for staff money.
So yeah, I think that's pretty
bring it back
appalling,
to
actually.
student funding,
You've defunded
Sure.
the student union
So
and
what
tried
do
to
you
shut
want
it
to cut
down.
from the staff budget? Because currently the staff budget's fully allocated with things like Safe Zone, which is an incredibly important app for the safety of everyone on campus. For things like the Woolyounga project, which is the Indigenous campus.
So previously, when you were talking about your campaign, you wanted to see student funding and put into, you know, to make students better and to build educations better and make, you know, the lifestyle on campus a lot better.
To maximise
what
that
are you
value
looking
of
at
the
changing
degree.
then? If you're saying that everything is okay and fine and dandy at the moment, what would your
I'm
role
not,
be?
I'm not necessarily sure
What would
that's how I framed it.
Okay, well, what would your role be as WUSA president then, in terms of making sure that students are getting everything that they need from this student funding?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest changes that I've been championing over the last year or so is the 24/7 library. I think that is an absolutely urgent service that we need during final exams, and indeed expanded. Things like GKA came out of the process of the buses, came out of the process of students saying, we'd like more buses. There should be more. It's a service that people urgently need to, you know, put pressure on that cost of living around Wollongong. And I think that's another excellent way forward. And these are just one of countless opportunities for the university to work with WUSA instead of necessarily saying the Vice-Chancellor doesn't spend money appropriately.
Well,
Perhaps
for instance,
if we
the
liaise with them.
Chancellor gave $26,000 of student money to the Liberal Party. I'm sure you guys are working very closely together, given that student money has literally directly gone to the Liberal Party under this particular Vice-Chancellor. So, no, I'm not particularly interested in working closely and collaboratively with the Vice-Chancellor. I'm interested in working with students and working with staff here on campus to actually fight for a better quality of education.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our discussion. I'd like to open the floor now to both candidates just to give their closing statements. So, Chloe, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'd really encourage people to vote for Save Our Union if you want to see a student union that's going to do the basic work of standing up for student rights in an era where 2/3 of students live below the poverty line and many Wollongong University students are getting ripped off across the Illawarra. So yeah, Save Our Union are a broad coalition of left-wing activists. You might have seen us around on campus getting out the yes vote as part of the marriage equality campaign or taking on the Turnbull government's disgusting 7.5% fee increases. So yeah, if you want to see the student union actually used for defending our rights and advancing them, please do vote for us.
And Zach?
No problem, thank you. I strongly encourage you to vote for the Revolution team to ensure that we get the services we need as real students to deliver the real outcomes that we need to ensure that we get the best possible value for our degrees. And I don't think it's acceptable for a student union to turn its eye away from the people it truly must represent.
Can I ask Zach a final question?
If you'd like.
Yeah, I'm just interested because you were on the WUSA Council when our president openly showed support for the Turnbull government's higher education package.
Which year are you referring to?
That was this year when Jasper...
I wasn't on WUSA.
Oh, the year before, I'm sure they supported the higher education package that year. Do you support the Turnbull government's higher education package?
I disagree fundamentally with the question.
Do you support the current government's higher education package, which includes 7.5% fee increases and over $2 billion of cuts to higher education? Do you endorse the Turnbull government, the Liberal government's budget package as it applies to students?
I endorse a general and generous fund to ensure that students get the education they deserve. I don't come from a rich background, and I had to work
Do you support that budget?
to get here. And I don't think that simply drumming this down or drumming this up to, do you support a federal policy?
It's pretty basic, really. Does the student union support cuts to funding for higher education?
To impact higher
That's
education
the kind of press
reform.
releases that a president of a student union should put out. They
If
should
you want
put
to
out a press
impact higher
release saying that they
education
oppose
reform,
those kinds of
run for the
reforms.
House of Representatives or the Senate.
All right.
Well, what would you do if you were running for the House of Representatives or the Senate? Would you be increasing fees?
Wrap this up, guys.
No worries.
Okay, we'll throw it back to you, Lauren and Aditya.
Well, that's everything we have for you guys this show. Thank you so much for watching. And remember,
If it's too long to read, this is the show you need.
see you guys next week.